SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. I'm your host, Todd Kirk, and I am joined by the magnanimous and effervescent.
Jeez.
I don't even know if that word. I'm not sure I know
up.
what that one means. Does that mean stinky?
I don't know if you swore at me. I don't know if you complimented me. I have no idea, Todd. So I'm going to go look that one up.
Oh, good. Casey, it's so good to be with you, my friend. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's awesome. We just got back from the Customer Success Festival. If you've never been to that, highly recommend it to you. Fantastic thought leadership. Shout out to Roger Mendez from Cisco. He had a great session. There's just so many people that had real life examples that you could immediately put into your playbooks or into your daily work. So shout out to the Customer Success Festival and what the work that they put on.
It's true. We got to meet a lot of great people while we were there, and look forward to having some of them maybe on the podcast in the coming weeks. So as we get started here with season 3. But you know, we are starting the 3rd season of the show, Casey, and as part of that, we're happening to do this right at the time as kids are starting to go back to school. And you know, everybody loves going to school, right? Hopefully this feels like a little bit of an opportunity for us to kind of reminisce about the good old days of school. And one of my favorite things about going back to school was the fact that I got to do book reports. Everybody loves doing a good solid book report, right, Casey? So what I thought would be fun today is I know you recently read Conscious Leadership by Jim Detmer, and I want to put you on the spot today because I actually haven't read the book yet. And just in true to form, going back to school, I want to cheat off your Cliff Notes. So I need you to give me the breakdown of this book because it sounds like it was a book that had an impact on you and probably has some really good valuable insights for our audience. So Casey, it's book report time, my friend.
Let's do it. And Todd, the reason why I recommended this book was one of the conversations that frequently occurred outside of AI, because of course you got to put AI to everything nowadays. But the other hot topic at the Customer Success Festival was emotional intelligence. Because the landscape of SaaS is changing so quickly, right? I mean, you think about where customer success managers, what their responsibilities were 2 years ago compared to today. Now, all of a sudden, SaaS organizations have to be profitable. It's not all about just blitzkrieg as fast as you can and just acquire customers. It doesn't matter the profit, right? It has challenged people in a way where people feel they're not confident in where their organization is headed, but they should be. It's just taking a step back and really asking yourself the question of why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? It usually has nothing to do with the circumstances that you're going through, but the way that you are putting emotion to the experiences that are taking place. So that's why I want to talk through this book, because I just think it's so fantastic in helping you start to understand emotional intelligence. So Todd, that's a little bit of the background of why I thought this book would be so meaningful.
Well, that's good because I'm a person who does not always feel like he's the most emotionally intelligent. And, you know, this is therapy, so it's not probably a good opportunity for me to look inwardly and realize why all of my relationships feel so strained and awkward because maybe I'm not able to truly read people well enough. So this will be a good conversation. So let's dive in. Casey, what would you say if you were maybe this should be the conclusion, but it's a book report. So you have to have a really good thesis statement as your opening plug. So what for you was the biggest core takeaway that you would put in your intro paragraph of your, high school English paper?
Oh my gosh. I probably failed high school English, so that's not a great starting for me, Todd. But
that's okay. The audience gets to give you the grade, and whether they give you an A or an F, it's a participation award, so you win. And either way,
thank you. Emotional intelligence begins with asking yourself the question why. That would be my starting sentence into emotional intelligence. And I'm going to describe this. Let's imagine that we're on the playground. We are there, and me and you,
And we're
Todd,
really we're sticking hard with this
we're
school
going to stick with
ground
the school
theme.
analogy.
Okay,
So we're on
cool.
the playground. It's recess time. We're going to go back to grade school where all of our trauma happened, anyways. And me and you get in a fight, Todd. And so back in my day, because I'm much older than you, what we would draw is we would draw a line in the sand, or we draw a line on the concrete, and we would say, okay, everybody that is for Casey, come on this side. Everyone that's for Todd is on that side. Okay. So in emotional intelligence, you have to kind of draw a line in the sand, and you have to say, okay, when I am behaving in a way that correlates to the values that I have, I'm above the line. When I am working in a way or acting in a way that maybe doesn't represent my core values, I am below the line. Okay, so I just think that's very helpful. Now, you might say, okay, I'm still a little vague on what that means. So there's three characteristics when you're above the line, Todd. The first characteristic is that you're curious. You actually want to know why you're feeling this way. The second is that you're open. You don't hold anything back. You're not guarding anything. And the third is that you're committed to learning. You want to understand more. Why are you feeling this way? Or why are you putting this emotion to this? Those are the three characteristics of being above the line. Todd, did that make
And
sense?
well, yeah. So, I mean, I haven't read the book, but I know the title is called Conscious Leadership. So I assume that means those three things are the evidence that you are conscious, right?
Yes, yes. And
Is
one
that fair? So being above
that's
the line
super
means
fair.
you are being a conscious leader.
Yes, but you're also conscious of if you're below the line, and I don't want you to tag below the line as meaning that's bad. So what below the line is, the characteristics of being below the line is that you're closed off, you hold some things back. You're committed to being right in that regard, and that you're um, more committed to saying this is the way that we need to approach this. Now, that's not bad. And I'll give you an example of why that's not bad. Let's say it's at the end of the month and I'm a customer success manager, or maybe I am a sales manager. Todd, you haven't updated your pipeline. I'm going to go to your desk and say, Todd, you have to get this done by 5 o'clock. You have to get this all updated. I need to have correct forecasting. You need to go in there, put in your notes, forecast this correctly. Now, am I forcing you to do that, Todd? Yes. Is that a behavior that I really don't want to have happen? I'd rather prefer that you just updated it consistently. Yes. But I am recognizing and I'm conscious that I have to go make this request of you because I need this done at a specific time. Now, was that bad that I did that? No. We just had to have it done. But I'm aware of where I'm at and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'll give you a negative way, and maybe being below the line might be a negative approach. I just was told that nobody is utilizing the new customer education resources I gave to the CSM team. And I say, you know what? I've had it with them. They consistently never listen to the information I give them. I'm trying to help them scale adoption. I'm going to go to their manager. I'm going to go tell them that so and so and so and so isn't doing this. They're keeping me from being able to do what I need to do. Well, I didn't stop and ask myself why they're not using the resources I have. I'm not committed to trying to fix that. I'm going and saying, reaction usually just emotionally. I'm not even challenging myself why I'm feeling that way. And I'm going to a manager. I'm being defensive. I'm putting blame. That's probably an unhealthy way to go and approach that.
Hmm.
Todd, is that? Do you think
So
of some examples? Is that resonating with you?
yeah, I can think of an example. Uh, and I don't think I'm ever going to watch the movie Hook the same way ever again. So while I've never read this book, and apparently I need to, all I could think about throughout this whole time was the scene when Peter Panning, played by Robin Williams, shows up in Neverland, and he's not Peter Pan yet. And Rufio draws the line in the sand with the sword, and then the Lost Boys have to choose which side of the line they're going to be on. And at that moment, Peter Panning has not become conscious. He hasn't become imaginative. He hasn't become curious. He hasn't become self-motivated. He's very self-centered and protective and guarded and doesn't want to see the world the way that it really is, which in this world was very positive and light and wonderful, right? So to me, it makes it feel like maybe Peter Panning in Hook is this unconscious leader, and Rufio is trying to get him to see this other side, but meanwhile Captain Hook is the toxic leader on this other side. And there's a point later where they draw lines in the sand as well. So when there's that shift, when he fully realizes who he should be as the conscious leader of Peter Pan, he's able to fly. So
well,
that was like super
Oh,
dorky, but like what's really funny is you use that analogy, and I'm like, wow. I think when I go watch the movie Hook, which I just loved as a kid, now it's actually a true story about realization of your potential as a leader.
I hope people are seeing how many different examples, whether it be in your home life, whether it be at work, whether it be working with a customer, how important this is. Let's pretend you have a customer that, oh my gosh, you feel like this deal is closed or the renewal is going to happen. And all of a sudden the customer comes back and says, hey, we're not going to be able to do this. We've never seen any value. Immediately, right? Your chest tightens, your voice maybe goes up, and you're like, we haven't provided value. Are you kidding me? Right? And all of a sudden, we've tied a huge emotion to what is taking place because we feel we're right. We feel that we have delivered this value. And all of a sudden, your brain gets cloudy. You're not able to really walk through with the customer what their concerns are, and you just react. And so being conscious of where you're at is what's so important. And then you got to make some decisions. Do I want to shift? Do I want to make a change in how I'm going to approach this? How do I actually want to interact? And so that's why you hear all this big stuff in meditation about breathing right now, Todd. Tons of people are just saying the importance of breathing, because what breathing allows you to do is just taking a deep breath. You give yourself the opportunity to reset, and then hopefully ask yourself the question of, why is my chest tight right now? Why am I so upset with this customer? Because when we're in a above the line state and we're curious and we're open and we're committed to learning, we say, value? Help me understand value. And now I'm getting the person to explain a little bit more about what they're feeling. I can validate what they're feeling. Oh, I could see where you're feeling that. Right? Now I'm able to have a conversation. The customer on the other end is expecting me to act defensively. They're expecting me to be closed-minded. They're expecting me to basically say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's where this breakup in our SAS therapy starts to happen, is because we're not giving ourselves a chance to consciously respond. Now, Todd, if you start to get really good at this, your unconscious attitude, your unconscious questions, your unconscious behavior starts to come through because you've consciously practiced this. So I doubt for Gandhi, he had to emotionally challenge himself in his feelings often because he was so good at it. It became who he was. So the goal of conscious leadership is to be in the state where you want to be a majority of the time. And when you're not, you quickly recognize it and then ask yourself if you want to be there or not. But the goal is to become unconscious, conscious leader, where you're not even having to think about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I need to read the book now because I'm not sure I fully understand how to go from be consciously unconsciously conscious. I maybe got a little bit lost in there, but the thing that came to my mind as you were saying that, Casey, is that we've all kind of heard the adage of like, focus on the things you can control. And what to me that suggests is that we oftentimes are so immediately caught up in feeling like life is happening to us that we aren't able to step out and feel like we are in the driver's seat. And so maybe this idea of conscious leadership, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but what I sensed in your explanation of this concept was that too often we allow our emotional state to kind of hijack our brain when those really challenging and stressful moments come, and we can't separate ourselves from that and to be able to think with clarity in the moment, and we respond in a way that actually is counterproductive to the thing that we want. Because usually when you get defensive and go on the attack or whatever that might be, it tends to put you into a place where it just escalates the problem rather than diffusing it. So I don't know if that's right, but that's kind of the sense I got. It's this idea of, I mean, that I mean, it's kind of a corny phrase, and I don't want to summarize this book to say focus on the things that you can control, but at least that's my kind of the way I'm understanding what you're suggesting.
Yeah, Tom, I'm going to add some things here. So number one, after you've had a conversation with, again, a colleague, a partner, a child, whatever, have you ever had a follow-up discussion with somebody else that you're explaining the situation to and say, I wish I would have said this? That's a great indicator that you weren't emotionally conscious when you were having that conversation. Now, again, no one's perfect at this. So I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I'm not saying there's anybody perfect at it. But that's a key indicator to let you know that you were not conscious of your emotion. To maybe better explain the unconscious conscious leader, I'll give you an example.
Conscious.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So I'll give you this example. When I interview salespeople, we'll be going through just initial discovery interview, and I'll just be asking them the basic questions. And I'll say, "Hey, Todd, would you mind role playing for me with just a little bit? Let's just role play. Let's go to the last company you worked for. Give me a minute pitch of your value prop. And let's pretend we met at a trade show. Todd, go, give me a minute pitch." Now, the people that have done this over and over again, Todd, they don't even think about it. They just go. It unconsciously, they give a response because they've done it so many times. When I then say, okay, Todd, that's super interesting. You know what? I am actually working with your competitor, and I'm actually doing an assessment with them right now. How would you say that you're different than your competitor? And again, unconsciously, most sales reps that I interview go into why they're better than their competition. And then I'll ask this question, Tom. I'll say, hey, thanks for doing the role play. If you could go back and do that again, what would you do differently? 90% of the time, the sales rep goes, I wish I would have asked you a question. I wish I would have said, well, what are you comparing between the two of us? How would you rank those priorities? Why is that what you're ranking us against? Well, that's not a conscious thing they consistently do when they're asked that question. They go back to what they normally do. So the goal is in emotional intelligence, when someone comes up to you in kind of an emergency and catches you off guard, or someone says something to you that just like hurts, is your natural response a question? Is it curious? Is it open? So that's how you become an unconscious conscious leader. Is you've practiced it so much, it's just who you are.
Okay, I like that a lot. So it's not just about the fact that we tend to respond in your example adds a lot of clarity, at least for me, because I think there's plenty of times where you're on with a customer and they tell you that they think they're going to leave, and then your first reaction is to tell them all the reasons why they shouldn't, instead of pausing and then trying to understand maybe why they are feeling that way, and listening and trying to understand and being a good ear. But so that to me, I think makes a lot of sense. And that's a little bit different than just being somebody who tries to be in control, right? Because a person who wants to be in control may actually just try to dominate the other person. And that's the opposite of what you want to do. Is that fair?
Here's another indicator. If it's intention that matters. Again, we talked about being curious, being open, and willing to learn, right? If your intention is wrong, I can still ask you a question and say, oh, like why do you feel like it's time to leave us? I might be trying to back you in a corner and use some type of sales methodology on you.
Like it's a manipulation tactic.
A manipulation technique. Yeah. There's a lot of great account executives and customer success managers that have closed a lot of business by manipulating the person, making them feel like the victim, or accusing the person, or doing some things that, yeah, you got the deal done, but you broke your relationship of trust, right? So here are 3 ways that you know that you're trying to manipulate someone. You're seeking for control, you're seeking for security, or you're seeking for approval. Control, security, approval. If you can give up those 3 things and say, I don't know where this is going to end, I'm naturally going to say, obviously that I'm not sure I understand why you would leave us, because on my side, I see a lot of value that you've gotten from our software, but I want to learn why we didn't meet your expectations. Could you help me understand that? And if I'm really sincere about that and I've let go of these things, I'm not worried about my boss getting upset at me that I lost this deal, and I'm just really wanting to know, at some point, either one of two things is going to happen. Number one, you're going to settle on an issue that probably was solvable and that maybe you could still solve. Or two, you're going to leave the person feeling, and Christy Fauci with clientsuccess.com has a great post on this of the 15 things you should do when a customer leaves you, like making sure they leave on good terms. Because number one, they might come back to you. Number two, that person might go to another company and say, hey, clientsuccess.com was so great with us. I want to go back to them. Just because they're leaving you does not mean that's the end, right? And that's the benefit of being above the line in that state.
Okay. So I'm trying to channel what I think someone would who's hearing this for the first time, what their reaction is, because I can absolutely feel in myself a lot of that, like, I don't know, Casey. I mean, that all sounds like nice and great, but it also feels kind of just like new agey, let what will be, you know. And the hard part where that I can hear a lot of people probably saying is like, well, then you're actually going into the opposite, because one is like you want to be in full control and you're going to force people away, and the other is you're going to relinquish control at all, and what will be, and it will just work out in the end because we're just going to hope for the best. And so I guess it clearly what you're suggesting is not either of those things.
Correct.
It's something different. And so, like, obviously there's evidence that you are a conscious leader, an unconscious conscious leader, when you are naturally open, curious, and willing to learn. That makes sense to me. I'm with you there, because what it suggests is that you don't allow your first emotional reaction of bad news cause you to completely think irrationally. Right. You're able to, maybe that's just you've seen enough times that it's like you have confidence that you can navigate this, and you're going to be willing to take it slow and try to understand. So that part I'm with you on. But how do you avoid allowing that to just turn into, I'm just going to listen to whatever you say, customer, and then it turns into great, well, I'm sorry to hear it, we'll see you next time, you know? So I guess what is the how do you ensure that, and maybe this is one of those things, maybe that really is just like, let what will be, but how do you avoid turning into this scenario where you're just receiving bad information and not allowing it to negatively affect you, but then it actually leads to negative outcomes? Like, how convince me that this actually will lead to better relationships, longer term customers, you know, better leadership outcomes inside of the organization. What I feel like I'm missing that still in what you've described to me, and I just kind of feel like maybe that's what the audience is hearing. So I'm trying to be a voice. I'm being you got to defend your thesis here, man. I know it's not your book. You're just giving a report on what you read, but tell me how do I take this and turn it into, yeah, okay, this is going to be better for me, and here's the proof.
Todd, great question around that. So I would answer that in three ways. Number one, Todd, I would ask you the most valuable relationships that you have in business, in at home, and in friendship. When you are your best self, are you those three things? Are you open? Are you curious? And are you willing to learn? Does that mean you don't challenge people that you love and that you care about? Of course you challenge, because you're curious about why they're feeling the way that they're feeling. So that's the first thing I would say, is you actually live these principles in your best relationships with customers, family, and friends. You do it all the time. So I'd ask you to just think through that a little bit in those experiences.
So I had a mentor when I was in college. So this is like 20 years ago. Shout out to Park Furman, by the way. He's a great man in his 80s now. But one of the things that he told me a long time ago is that if someone knows you love them, you can tell them almost anything.
Right.
And I do believe that in my bones, that if people can sense that you genuinely care about them, they're way more receptive to you challenging them and pushing them back, or pushing back on them whenever they give you bad news, or you have to give them bad news, either way. So start with genuine care. I believe that. Okay. So that's one. What's your second one?
And Todd, you're challenging from a point of not being right, but a point of saying, I want what's best for you. Right. That's a key part of that. And those three characteristics help you stay in that state. Okay. Point number two is, backed by a lot of data in the Challenger Cell book, right? One of the things it talks about is, hey, a lot of conversation about relationship building, right? But the people that were most successful was the Challenger. Well, a Challenger has to build off of a relationship. And in order for me to challenge, and again, I think the data was something like 60% of top performers were Challenger sellers, was that they have committed to their ability, those three things. So again, you kind of stole that a little bit, Todd, with what your mentor said. But in order for me to challenge, I have to help that person on the other end feel that they're being seen. And that is what helps me do that. The third aspect around this, where I would say, yes, this works, is look at the deals that you've lost. How did you approach those deals? The relationships that were lost, they're usually because you were defending what was right, you were closed, and you held stuff back, right? If you just look at what your life and what's going through, you're usually your own living proof of why this works correctly.
So I agree with you on all of those points, but I'm going to give you one other objection that comes into my mind. That, by the way, you seem so calm and zen-like today. It's because this book. What is it? What have they done to you, Casey? No, sorry. The one other thing that I think of when I hear this, and I think this is a part that I think a lot of people probably struggle, because like I think if I'm a CSM or I'm a seller, I can accept the idea that I can be more honest with people when I'm open and curious. I can have better outcomes and get further along with them when I'm open and I'm curious and I genuinely care about them. But I think the thing that is challenging, that I think a lot of people are hearing, is, yeah, but that takes a really, really long time and a big investment. And it's really hard to make those investments and then feel like either A, you can't reach and support all of the people in your world that you're supposed to support. I mean, if you think about it, the most science says that we can really only have like 100 close relationships, period. Right. Well, we talked to somebody this week when we were at the Customer Success Festival that has a book of business of over 600 clients. And if you're a scale CSM, you might have 2,000 of them. So what are you supposed to do? And when I have to interact with more than 100 people at any given time, there's no way to really form deep and meaningful connections with them. And so how do I balance that? Because that's probably the other big piece that I'm worried about, is like, okay, you've convinced me that maybe it will work, but that is going to take a lot of time, and it's going to potentially have opportunity cost whenever I'm now focusing on such a small amount of people when I have to focus on so many. So is there a way that, I mean, I'm sure the book doesn't address this, but I'm curious, like what would your response be to that? How do I apply that when I'm expected to build relationships and be open and honest with so many people that it feels like impossible?
Yeah. Well, one, emotional intelligence allows you to walk through, if you're going to do something at scale, why are you going to do it at scale? Because most of us do something at scale to benefit us. Mm-hmm. We don't do a lot of things in scale to benefit the person that I'm working with. So let's choose the CS person that has 600 accounts. A normal response. So someone there, say one of your 600 accounts, you get a lot of support questions that are coming in. Then you get someone that sends you an email and says, hey, I would love to get better adoption of your software. I'm about ready to roll this out. I want to train everybody. Your natural response, because you're overwhelmed, is you maybe have a quick part saved in Outlook. You copy and paste it. You send it. Is that good? Is that bad? Do people use it? Is that what the person really was asking for?
Well, what if I had the most amazing block of template text ever written?
It's probably pretty awesome.
Maybe it's awesome.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm not saying it's good or bad, but if I was putting myself in that person's shoes, the 600 people that are on their end, I might think I might overwhelm this person. So what if when the person responded and said, hey, I'm in need of, I'm about ready to roll this out. I need some help with education. What can you do to support me? What if I said, hey, I'm excited for what you're doing. I've created a quick survey, 5 questions, because what I want to send you, I want to send what matters to you. Could you take just a second and fill this out? and then I'll send you the appropriate resources that match your goals. I could still put that into a quick part. I could still scale that out into a survey. But what I'm thinking about is the person on the other end. How do I give them the right information that's going to make them the most successful? And then once I do that and they respond, I'm going to say, hey, could you be honest with me? Was that useful, or did that discourage you? And I'm going to be willing to ask that question because I'm curious if that is actually solving what they're looking for. And out of that, if I keep doing that, I'll probably find some scalable solutions that are going to work for people. But if I start that way, instead of how's it going to help me and how am I going to get people answered and how the information I'm going to get back to them, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying people won't find that useful. But what you're missing out is building intentionality in that 600, because you could still build it that way.
Yeah. Reminds me of I had another mentor back in college, Nathan Furr. He's an author, great guy, who wrote a book called Nail It and Then Scale It. And so to me, it suggests that maybe there's a value in figuring out how to nail it, right? Every single time, nail the relationship every single time, and then figure out, now that I've nailed it, now how do I scale that? Instead of trying to say, I want to scale it first, and then I'll figure out how to nail it later. So I think there's you got to make sure you go in the right order. Casey, this has been great. Awesome conversation. We obviously, I think, have given some people some stuff to think about. Are they being conscious leaders? Are you in a mindset that's very centered on what's best for you and not what's best for other people? And are we willing to take the time to step out of our own mindset and then look at something different? If I were giving the homework assignment this week, I would say everyone go watch the movie Hook and analyze it based off of these forms of leadership and determine what kind of leader you want to be. Do you want to be a Rufio, a Peter Panning, a Peter Pan, or a Hook? But I'm not the one giving the homework assignment. So Casey, what homework would you give our audience today?
Oh, Todd, thank you. I'm going to give a quick story because as I asked myself that question that you asked me, like, defend this, make it more. I kept on asking myself that question as I was going through that. What tangible results? I'm going to give a quick one, and then I'm going to give my challenge. The Kansas City Chiefs football. Sorry, we're going to go back to football. They played last night. They beat the Baltimore Ravens. Great.
This was supposed to be school analogies only.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going past this one.
Sorry.
But people remember last year the Kansas City Chiefs played in the Super Bowl. And during the Super Bowl, Coach Andy Reid was coaching, and they were behind in the first quarter. Travis Kelce, one of the star players for the Kansas City Chiefs, was extremely upset that he hadn't gotten the ball at all. Travis Kelce ran up to his coach, even bumped his coach, kind of shoved his coach, and give me the ball.
And he screamed in his face, and it went viral. It was terrifying.
On national television, millions upon millions of users. And Andy Reid just listened, understood, and thought through what was Travis trying to actually say. They adjusted their game plan. They got Travis the ball more, and they actually won the Super Bowl because Andy Reid showed emotional intelligence. That's another proof point I give. But anyways, the success story or the challenge for this week of what I would ask you to do is, throughout this conversation, you probably had some tightening of chest. You maybe talked to yourself inside your head of why Casey was wrong about this. What my homework for you is for you to think about your own thoughts that you had even during this podcast and ask yourself, were you open? Were you curious? And were you willing and committed to learn? Or were you closed, defensive, and committed to being right? And then ask yourself the question, why am I feeling that way? And you'll be surprised what that little voice in your head will start to tell you. And it will give you examples, and it will give you thoughts and ideas. And that's what emotional intelligence is all about.
Casey, it's great advice. Love it. I forgot that. Why did I say Rufio and Peter Pan and Hook? Obviously, everybody wants to be Shmi.
For those that watch Hook, they'll get that joke.
Yeah. Good luck for this throwback movie from the 90s.
You're right.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Thanks, Todd.
SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.